Doing today? Everyone hear me okay? Perfect. Alrighty, so we have about 12 people signed up, and I think 6 are here right now, so it could be that a couple straggle in, but I'm excited to talk to you all, and it's nice to kind of have a smaller group, not the hundreds of people on a webinar, so it'll be nice. I want this to be just really informal. So a lot of you sent me questions ahead of time, so I'll address those, but you all do so much research too. So if you have any thoughts on what I'm saying or any additional websites or additional tips, please type them in the chat because as you all know, my specialty is translation and not research. So any research tips that you want to throw in, I'm sure everyone would appreciate it. All right, so we have Janice and Donna and Barbara. Who else do we have on here? Ken, hello, and Nora and Kim. Great. So where is everyone tuning in from? Donna's in North Carolina. Dana's here in Washington, I think, right? To Washington. Okay, Barbara's in Seattle. And okay, Whidbey Island. That sounds nice right now. Hi, Kim. All right, so we have a lot of West Coast people. I know Joe's trying to come later. Hi, Nora from Massachusetts. I don't know if you guys know, I used to live in Boston for 4 years, so I'm very familiar with Massachusetts. And I know Joe's coming later from a haircut. She's one of the getting one of those haircuts nowadays that you're allowed to get again. So she is also on the West Coast. Good. And I clearly have not gotten one yet, so I am looking forward to that day. Wow, we have okay, half of you have gotten haircuts. That's great. I think I need to follow your lead. I know my husband's hair, it's a little different for girls, but my husband's hair is like this big and this long, so it's definitely been entertaining. So all right. Well, like I said, I have some questions here, but as I'm answering your questions, if other questions come up related to my answer or related to another person's question, just go ahead and feel free to type it in the chat. Like I said, this is just a chat, so I don't want it to be just me talking. I'd rather have all of us communicating and throwing in ideas and asking questions as we go along, and we'll just go for however long things kind of work out. All right. So Nora is here. Yeah. So Nora, let's start with your question. And I have the questions on this screen, so excuse my looking. But Nora emailed the question, what are the best resources for finding Jewish ancestors in Germany in the late 19th and early 20th centuries? She's had no success in finding birth or marriage records. Okay, so the things that, hey Ken, good to see you. The things that I've found about Jewish records, Nora, you may have already found these, but I'll put them in the chat. The most popular website is JewishGen. Excuse the bullet point. You'll have to get rid of that bullet point on there. But that has over 400,000 records, and they should have a lot of civil records on there. Have you tried that website? Oh, so frustrating. Okay, well, I'm sure you're also part of Facebook groups, but my family is, my dad's family is actually Jewish, so I'm part of the Facebook group. What's it called? The Jewish Genealogy Portal. So that might be a resource to ask more people if they have other ideas. And then just regular civil records as well. I'm not sure exactly what period you're looking for in those time periods you said. But the civil records, like Germany kept civil records for Jewish people as well. So if you're looking post 1876, the Jewish records should also just be a part of the mainstream civil records. And then Barbara says, Avo Tainu. Can you explain a little bit more about that, Barbara? Okay, great. So yeah, Nora, maybe check out that website. What is that, Barbara? What kind of website is that? Okay, so that's Origins and Migrations of Jewish People. Nora, that might be something to check out at least. But I'm sure you've tried Family Search and Ancestry for civil records, but just kind of as a reminder, the Jewish people should be in those normal civil records as well. Died during the Third Reich, but cannot track them prior to the Nazi regime. Okay, I mean, so if you're, again, post 1876, I would start looking at the civil records. Anyone else have any thoughts on Jewish? Otherwise, that's a good segue into civil records that Mark asked. But one thing I actually do want to add is Nina isn't on here. Nina Gaffney, I'm sure you recognize her name from our Ask the Translator hours. She seems to have done a lot of Jewish research and might have some good tips. So I would reach out to her just through our Facebook group, our Ask the Translator Facebook group, and see if she might have any ideas. Barbara seems to know a lot. And then Dr. Adina is a Jewish genealogy expert, and I had a post on my blog, I think like a year ago or so, that she wrote with her contact information. So if you just Google SK Translations, Dr. Adina, that post should pop up, and maybe try reaching out to her and see if she has any ideas. But keep us updated. It's always good to learn more about different resources, and thanks, Barbara, for throwing in that other resource as well. Okay, since we are talking about civil records, I'm going to skip around a little bit to yeah, major brick wall. It's so frustrating. To be honest, I've done the German, and I haven't even started on my dad's side, the Jewish Russian side. And so I'm curious. I'd like you to really keep me updated and let me know, because that would help my family as well. Where's Mark's question? Oh no, it's Ken's question. Okay, even better, because Ken, I think, is here. I don't know if Mark's here yet. Not yet. Okay, so Ken, your question was about civil records in general. So you might know this, but it's very important to know your town and your state when you're looking for civil records, because there's a lot of town names with the same name in Germany. So I always say in my presentations, just like there's a million Springfields in America, there's a lot of town names that are the same in Germany. So make sure you know that town and state, and that's how you look up civil records on Family Search, on Ancestry. Both of those websites have specific sections, specific categories for civil records. They were kept post 1876, as I mentioned with Nora's question. So if you're looking for civil records before 1876, you may be able to find them depending on the area. So the places where Napoleon conquered in the early 1800s, a lot of times he brought with him the French record keeping system into those areas. So if your family is from more Rhineland area and the places where Napoleon conquered, you may get lucky and get civil records earlier. But if not, it's, as a general rule, after German unification. Which, anybody know off the top of your head when that German unification was? Yeah, and Nora got it first, 1871, and Barbara, perfect, 1871. So after that, it took them a while to get settled, apparently, and it's 1876 when those civil records started. A great website, if you're not having any luck, Ken, with Ancestry or Family Search, is standesamt.com. Let me put it here for you. Standesamt is the German word for civil registry office. So, for example, when I got married in Austria, we got married at the Standesamt. Yes, they did. They did continue with parish records, Barbara. You're right. So it's almost like two different things. There was the church records that did continue, plus the vital records in most places as well. So this website is standesamt.com. So that with that, you can find the specific civil registry office for your ancestor's town. So if your ancestor lived in a smaller village, for example, they might have had a civil registry office that was kind of bigger. So they were part of a bigger jurisdiction for that. So in order to find where your village was a part of, you can go to this website, which is in German, but it's pretty easy. I don't remember if they have an English flag to switch it or not. But if you go to Ort, that means the town. So that's where you type in your ancestor's town. And then you just press Suchen, which means search. And then right then and there, the information for that Standesamt will come up. And it's really cool. They have the address, the email address. So everything you need to contact that Standesamt is right there. So at that point, you could just send them an email. I always tell people, if you can write in German, that's wonderful. But they're not going to not respond to you for writing in English. So many Germans nowadays speak English and actually really enjoy practicing their English. which I find which I don't like because whenever I go over to Austria or Germany, I always want to speak German, and as soon as they find out I'm from America, they want to switch to English, but most Americans do like that because they don't want to have to speak German, so you should be okay if you want to write in English, but it's a great website to find out your specific town's Standesamt. Janice says she's having trouble finding records for her Müller family in Sachsen. She found an address. I found something close in Myers. Okay, let me think about this, Janice, for a second. So Janice, you can't find the specific town. Is that what you're asking me? Okay. Have you tried Wittgenstein by Stolberg am Herz? So when you type in the town, when you type in the address, does it come up? Oh, I get. Okay, so are you saying you don't know which Standesamt it is? Is that your question? Gotcha. Okay, well, I would try doing the Standesamt.com. When you type in the address on Google, Breitenstein by Stolberg am Herz, that's the village, right? Okay, so I would try typing that in on Standesamt.com. And thanks for your quick answers, by the way. Try typing that in, and if that doesn't come up, go to the next biggest town that's closest to that on Google Maps and things like that, or see what jurisdiction it is on Google and try typing that next biggest town in. But that's probably your best bet. All right, going back to our list. Donna says she has a copy of her second great grandfather's Catholic baptism from 1841 in Bavaria. The person that sent it to me only gave her Johann Brod's entry in the church register. So this is all I have. The copy's very poor. She sees the number 311 next to the town name, and she was wondering if 311 could be the house number. Yes, that would be my guess. I did see that you sent it to me. That the numbers there are usually the house number. If you can somehow track down the real record, that would obviously be a big help. If you can go back to the person who sent it to you and ask where they got it, how they got it, because if you can see the other entries on the page, or better yet, the headings, it will actually tell you what the information in that column is. So I know you didn't have a choice because that's all he sent you, but I always tell my clients to look at the entire record, not just your ancestors' record, because that will give you more clues as to the information listed in your ancestors' record if you can't read it. So, for example, you can always check the record above and below and see if that script is a little easier to read. And once you figure that out and figure out, okay, that's an occupation in that place, or okay, that's a town, or that's an address in that place, you can go back to your ancestors record because the formatting is usually more or less the same, and then have an idea of what you're looking at there. But usually, if there's a number in the address thing, that would be a house number, would be my guess, especially the 311. I've seen a lot of those 3 digits. No problem. And Mark says, is Mark on here yet? I don't think Mark's on here, so we'll come back to his question at the end. Yeah, Barbara says, Janice, try looking at the Stolbergs and Myers and look at the maps carefully. Yeah, exactly. That's a great tip, Barbara. And Janice, do you know about the fact that you can toggle the maps in Myers Gazetteer? That you can change it from yeah, I love that you can change it from the historical to the modern and vice versa. So definitely try playing with that. Okay, who else is on here whose question I haven't gotten to yet? I want to make sure I get the people who are here's questions first. Barbara, I think I haven't gotten your question yet. Yes, Barbara says, why does handwriting sometimes differ within a single parish record entry? The names in a different alphabet, the names is in a different alphabet than the dates and the sponsors? That's a really good question. This happens a lot. I don't know the reason for doing this, but a lot of times names and towns were written in the Latin alphabet. So that's the alphabet that we write in. And the rest of the entry was in the old German handwriting. So this is really important to know. I know a lot of you have a lot of experience with the script, but for those people who don't, this can be confusing because they might see a name and they might think, oh, this is what an E looks like because this name is Elizabeth, and then try to find all the rest of the E's in that record that look like that. But it is often the case that names and sometimes towns are written in the regular alphabet where the rest of it is written in current. Perhaps to make it clearer, I'm not sure why their reasoning for doing that is, but maybe to make things clearer. But it is actually just good to know. Yeah, exactly. That happens, and it is very nice when the names are readable. Hi, Michelle. Glad to have you join us. I This is my first time using Easy Webinar, so I'd love feedback on audio and how you guys are hearing me and seeing me. But I did hear from Easy Webinar that it works best with Google Chrome, so that might be something to think about if Safari is giving you trouble. But this is kind of the first time, so any feedback on connection issues and things are great. Barbara, you said C? Can you guys see me? Okay. Oh, hi, Deborah. Good to see you. Yeah, Barbara, my video should be on. I'm not sure why that wouldn't be the case. Um, but hopefully at least you can hear me. That's more important than seeing me. Okay, Barbara, I hope that answered your question. Joe's question. Joe was talking about how you were getting a haircut, and we started a nice chat about, I think half the people on here just recently got haircuts, and I obviously have not yet, but it's on my list. But Joe wants to know, is there information about what professions would indicate higher education and where to find such information? Okay, you're coming in just great. You actually did a typo and said you are vomiting in just great, and I was like, "Oh no, what is vomiting?" I wasn't sure what you meant by vomiting at first, but coming in just great is good to know. Thank you. So Joe's question is about how do you know what professions are higher education or not? Um, so Joe, specifically, you sent me that some of your ancestors were school teachers and a Weisenschreiber. Um, what I've been able to find about Weisenschreiber is a clerk for an orphanage, but that seems very odd. Is that what your understanding of Weisenschreiber is, or have I not stumbled upon the right definition? Okay, clerk in an orphan's court. That makes sense, and that's consistent with what I was finding. That makes more sense than an orphanage rather than an orphan's court. Okay, so what I've been finding when I kind of Googled your question a little bit is there were certain occupations that were in guilds, which I think you're aware of, and those are more obviously the thinking in German. The craftsmen, the Handwerker is the word that I was thinking of, the craftsmen and the merchants. And if you want to look up more information about that specifically, I think you could probably find more in German than you can in English. Good, Michelle. I'm glad to know. That's good to know that Chrome works better than Safari. So Joe, I know you do have some German experience, and I know it's always, not the best to look up in German, but if you're stuck in English, sometimes Googling in German will help you. So I wanted to give you the words for guild in German. And something interesting that I learned is there's actually two different meanings. So this word, Zunft, which is the word I always learned for guild, apparently was just for craftsmen, at least in certain time periods. And then the word Gilde here was more related to tradesmen or merchants. So depending on who your ancestors were, it might help to kind of differentiate between those two you're trying to look up. And I'm pretty sure, and if anyone is better at German plurals than me, please correct me. But I'm pretty sure Zunfte is the plural for guild, so that Zunft word. German plurals are so irregular, so you just have to memorize them. But that helps kind of knowing those words to try to look things up. I did also find a book. Here it is on, there we go. Occupations in the Middle Ages. So that I know that's farther back than you were probably going, but it was interesting kind of to get an idea of what the system was based on, and that's where it said that the two words for guilds were different. Um, there was also a lot of occupations which I wasn't aware of that were seen as unehrliche, so unhonorable occupations, and that included millers, which I didn't know that. That's my mom's maiden name is Müller, so that's my family, and weavers, and those were kind of the surprising ones that were seen as unhonorable, at least in the Middle Ages. And then there was also kind of the ones that you might think make more sense. Yeah, weaver. Apparently, it's it's not very honorable, which I don't know why. And the book actually said it doesn't make sense to us today either. He wasn't really sure why. But then there was the other ones that made a little bit more sense, such as actors, which we all know from Shakespeare's time wasn't seen as very honorable, and the grave diggers and things like that. So there were the unhonorable ones that were dishonorable, that made sense, but then millers and weavers just really surprised me. And then I know Joe, you said, Barbara, that's a good point. Was weaving done by the Roma, so more the gypsy people to kind of generalize? Um, Maybe at some points, but I don't think just solely, because I know Janice has Weaver ancestors. Anyone with the last name Weber has Weaver ancestors, but maybe the combination. If anyone finds out, let us know. 'Cause I'm curious. It really surprised me this morning when I found that out. And then Joe, I know you said you had ancestors who was a school teacher and the Weisenschreiber. So for trying to figure out how much education those people were required to have, I think it would probably be best to Google that specifically. So I was able to find some information on school teachers. The word for education, again, you can try Googling in English first, but if you're not getting any results, try German. The word for education is Ausbildung. So you could type in like Ausbildung für Schullehrer. Um, yeah, so for school teachers. And I was able to find something in English. I couldn't remember what part of Germany your ancestors were from, but this is about Prussia. And that's in English, and it's a Wikipedia article about the Prussian education system and the history of it, and it kind of explains how, um, the process was for people studying to be school teachers, the education that was required, and what I found just through quick Google search this morning, it seemed like it was different, Rhineland Falls, okay, so maybe Google that specifically, it's where mine are from too. But it seems like it differed on the area. So I was finding very specific things for Prussia, for Austria, for different states. So it seemed like the education requirements were different. A lot of times it was connected with the church for school teachers, at least in certain areas and certain time periods. But it was definitely different than the guilds. The guilds would have more. Um, the more educated one seems to be from Zweibrücken. Oh, that's interesting. The guilds, which, kind of we know from movies, seem to, they were more what's the word? The apprenticeship, and then the journeyman, and then the master. So that was their level of education system, which is still in Austria, and I assume Germany today. My husband, he studied electrical engineering, and in Austria, when you're 15, you have the choice to continue with typical, like regular academic high school and college, or to start a trade. And it's a little different than in America. A lot of times in America, we kind of have a stereotype about people who decide to, just do a trade instead of going to college, which obviously shouldn't be the case. In Austria, it's not like that. It's like you either do one or the other, and both are seen as equal, which I think is great. But yeah, it's the same. So it's still something. The apprenticeship, the journeyman, and the master is still something that's prevalent in Europe today. So that's more of the guild system. So I hope that answered your question, or at least give you something to go on. Let's see, who else have I missed? Michelle is here. Michelle says her great grandfather was forced to change their last name during World War II in Danzig. She often wondered why this was forced on people. I have been told it wasn't German sounding enough. Do you know how I could research this? To me, Michelle, I am almost wondering if that's a myth, and I don't know if it was forced on people. I'm not saying it's not, but if any of you saw my YouTube webinar with Jim and the genealogy tip a day, Michael, last week, they were talking about a lot of myths, and that kind of seems to me this forced name change that it could be. I'm not saying it's not, but it's worth kind of digging into and checking it out. I did find, a forum about Danzig name changes, and Michelle, I know you speak German, so this should be fine for you to read. If not, let me know. Um, someone had a similar question as you, where they also heard that their or someone's grandfather was forced to change their name. And in this forum, it says that kind of they don't think that they were actually forced, but it might have been a way to get better opportunities if they maybe had a Polish sounding last name and wanted more German, or vice versa. So check out the thread and see if anything might ring true for your family. Thanks, Joe. EuropeanRoots.com, German Professions, and someone else earlier posted a great occupation website. So thank you, everyone, for sharing those links. Okay, Nora, that's a good point. So much stuff happened in Danzig during World War II that it would not surprise me if it was strongly encouraged but not forced. That could definitely be the case. And it also could be, if your neighbors were doing it and your friends were doing it, it just kind of became the thing to do. Um, Oh, that's great, Michelle, to have the document. Yeah, check out that forum. It is all in German, like I said, but I think you said you grew up speaking German, so hopefully that will be helpful to you. And I can't remember how recent the forum was, but check it out and see if, maybe you can ask questions there too. Barbara says, do you know in general where to find the family lineages people had to do for the Third Reich? I was told they had to be at least 3 generations. Yeah, so those are called Ahnentafel or Ahnenpass. I've translated a lot of those, and I believe that all of my clients I've translated for have found them through Ancestry. Has anyone else here had any experience with those? I'm 99% sure that all the ones I've translated have come from Ancestry. So check it out there. What you could also do if you're not having any luck is just Google Ahnentafel plus your city. They'd probably be in the archives. Um, as well. I'm pretty sure they'd also be in the state archives as well, but Ancestry would probably be easier to try first. Yeah, exactly, Deborah. The National Archives would probably be where they kept as well. But if you don't want to go through the hassle of writing, try Ancestry. But yeah, I think that I don't. Deborah, do you think they'd be in the national or the state? Might be worth trying both. Oh, here in the US. Okay, I didn't know that. That's good to know. Any more information, Deborah, about how they could contact? Would it just be the National Archives of America? Yeah, Michelle, these Ahnentafel were amazing. I mean, obviously done for a bad reason, but for genealogy purposes, they're so amazing because they often go back from the person who had to do it all the way to the 1600s or 1700s. So it's basically like a genealogist's dream to find them. So they are, obviously for people who were still over there during World War II, but they are amazing documents with very good genealogical information. Did I miss? Deborah says John Humphrey found some, I believe. Okay, that's great, Deborah. Thank you. So yeah, definitely check out the National Archives to see if you can find any there. That's a really good tip. Thanks, Deborah. Cool. That's good to know. SS records. Great. Okay. That's really good to know. Thank you, Deborah. And then Deborah, we'll get to your question. Do you have any experience with, I don't know how to say this, Arkansas or Arsensis? I'll write the website down here. No, I don't actually, but I looked it up today and it looks really cool. Have you done research with it? For people who don't know what it is, I'll write down. So it's archives for Hessen and Niedersachsen and Bremen, and Schleswig-Holstein recently got added. And then it has all those data sets and archive inventory. So it looks like a really great site if you have ancestors in those places. Okay, so Deborah's found some records for her Wahlen Hesse Darmstadt ancestor. Um, okay, so if they're not digitized, are you able to write to the archives and get copies, or how does that work? I'll get a drink while she's typing. Okay, yeah, maybe try. I mean, obviously, all you can do is try writing again, or maybe if there's a phone number, you can somehow FaceTime, but that might be overwhelming with the language. Um, yeah, I haven't. Anyone else? Anyone else have experience with the site? Is there a Facebook group? A lot of the different archives have Facebook groups. Has there been any? Have you tried checking that out if there's like a user Facebook group or anything? Yeah, keep us updated because that looks like a really cool site. And I just discovered at a recent family reunion that we have ancestors from Niedersachsen too. So I was excited you let us know about that site. Thank you. All right. Anyone else on here whose question I haven't answered yet? We do have more, but I want to get you all first. Charlotte, Charlotte, did you have any? I don't think we've gotten Charlotte's questions by email. All right, write in if you have one or if something's occurred to you as we've been talking, and if not, I'll just keep going. Mark isn't on here, but I'll answer his. Oh, Janice had one about Latin Catholic records. Let me see what I wrote about that. Oh, yeah. So Janice said, after finishing the handwriting course, the first records you found are in Latin, of course. That figures. Any advice for deciphering German Catholic records written in Latin? Um, I mean, there's the Family Search genealogical word list, which I love. That's a big help. I'm sure you've seen that, but I use that a lot when I was kind of checking things out for my church records book. And then do you have Roger Meinert's book already? It's this book right here. You do. Okay. So he has a whole chapter on Latin records. Something that throws me off in Latin records sometimes with the handwriting, the German handwriting, is the thing that looks like an H in German handwriting, so that the loop above the line and below the line, that is an S in Latin. So that's good to remember. Yes, exactly. You know that trick. So yeah, Barbara, that's Roger Miner's book. Thank you. That's if I can. Oh no, that's Edna Benz's book. That's good to know. I have that book, but didn't think of that. So if I can, you can decipher German records has a section on Latin words. Yeah, and if you don't have, here it is, Edna Benz. If you don't have that book, it's a really good one. I have it. Um, it's one of the first books I got. I actually had an embarrassing story happen. I don't think we have anyone from the San Diego Genealogical Society on here, but I was giving a presentation there a couple of years ago, and Edna Benz is from their society, and I love her book. And when I was giving my presentation there, and I was recommending that book, someone in the audience raised their hand and said, "Oh, did you know that Edna Benz is from our society?" And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! I'd really love to meet her. Would it be possible for me to meet her?" And they said, "She died a long time ago." So that was a little awkward, but her legacy lives on, and it's a great book, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's just a little, like, paper book, but she has a lot of great vocabulary and samples and, like Barbara said, Latin and German, and she might have something else in there too. Okay, let's see. Kim says, "When you do translations, do I just send you the bundle of letters?" Kim, if you could email me the documents, that helps the most because I have my great big monitor right here next to me, and I really zoom in on the letters. As you all know, when you work with the handwriting, getting into that nitty gritty detail of the difference between the E's and the N's and the M's and the R's is really important. So I always ask people to email me the documents, scan them in at least 375 DPI, so I can zoom in without it being pixelated. And then I can do a word count, and I can do about 250, 300 words per hour. And then I just kind of let you know the quote and how long it will take me from there. So that's that. Let's see, any other questions that I missed? Oh, Mark, poor Mark. I keep trying to get to his question and then skipping it. Mark said, "Is there a good website to interpret, translate German newspaper prints from the 1800s?" So that print is called Fraktur, and that word comes from the Latin for broken. Um, any of you who have worked with the script know it kind of looks like a broken, jagged type of writing. So that's where that word comes from, which I thought was cool. Um, I haven't found a good website to kind of really do everything, but I have a couple. So, for most of you, I think all of you should have gotten this. This is my recent premium post on how to read some tricky Fraktur letters. And I got a lot of the samples from that, which I also wrote on the post from this website. It's in German, but it gives you a lot of great examples. So, lesen, for those of you who don't speak German, means to read. So, reading Fraktur. And then this website, it's also Wikipedia, but they have a great key at the bottom. I think it's pretty far down, but if you scroll down to the bottom of that Wikipedia page, they have a key. Um, and then I also something that's really cool is, I think, is if you can get Fraktur on your Microsoft Word. So you can download the font, and then you can practice typing, like, "I am tired today," and seeing what that looks like in the Fraktur font, or whatever you wanna write, you can try writing it and train your brain to get used to those letters. So I didn't save this, website on my little list here, but it was a premium post, couple months ago on how to download the old German handwriting fonts and how to download the Fraktur font, install it in your Microsoft Word so you can practice with it. And it's just really fun too. You can write people letters in this old font, so I enjoy it, and I think you all are similar to me in that regard, so hopefully you'll enjoy it as well. All right, we got Nora's, Donna's, Mark's, Deborah's, Michelle, Barbara, Joe, Janice, Ken. I think we got everyone that I had as pre-emailed. Any other the questions that you guys have that you thought of recently? Joe says Fritz Jungling did a workshop on Latin handwriting. Picked out resources in 2017, so maybe his lecture is on Family Search Wiki. Yeah, Fritz is great. He is a very big linguistic nerd like myself, so I got to meet him a couple of years ago, and we really enjoyed talking all things linguistic, and he's so knowledgeable. And was that an online workshop, Joe? Oh, that's great. Yeah, if we can dig that up and if that exists, that'd be a great resource because he really knows so much about all things language. Yeah, he's great. Okay, anybody else have any questions that came to your mind while we were chatting? Okay, we'll wait for Barbara to think of her question. And don't forget, I have the raffle for who gets the book or the vital record. I got a nice little cup here from a Christmas market. No, Michelle, I didn't see yours. Yours about wiring money to Poland. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I missed it. Oh, here. Yeah, I did see that, and I think I was in the middle of talking, and I'm sorry, I forgot to go back. The archives in Wrocław found some birth records for my great grandmother's siblings. We were not aware that she had siblings or that they weren't talked about, or they weren't talked about. The archives are asking for 60 Polish, isn't zloty, I think, right? To be wired, which is only about $15, but the bank charges me $30 to double the amount. There is the website TransferWise. TransferWise.com, I believe, or just try TransferWise if it's not com. Um, but that is something you have to pay for and might only be beneficial if you're thinking about doing it more often. Um, but they might have like a free first transfer or something like that. So check that out. Other than that, PayPal does do international, but I don't know if they would take that in Poland. You'd have to ask them. Ken says, when's the DNA craze going to take hold in Germany? Ken, I don't know because the Germans are so this is said with the utmost love, being married to an Austrian, but they are such a private people. Like, they are very, very concerned about data and data privacy, um, so much. Like, they would not want to risk any type of their data, and this is, of course, I'm generalizing, but compared to Americans, Germans and Austrians put a lot more emphasis on data privacy, and so the fact that a DNA testing company would have all of their data, I think really scares a lot of people. So I don't know if it's just a matter of time, and the fact that it's so big in America will eventually lead to a lot of people doing it, but I think that part of it, the fact that companies would have their DNA, their data, is a big obstacle or a big, what's the word? Something they don't like for a lot of Germans. Barbara says, "Can you suggest a good source for tracing the language shift and how it affected spelling and records?" Oh, that's something I love, the language shift. I don't know off the top of my head, Barbara. I'd have to think about that one, but I'm sure there's books on it, like The Great Vowel Shift, but that's a lot farther back, I think, than you're wanting to go. Um, if you're looking at just recently, honestly, like um, the shifts are the variables are pretty consistent with that T and D and the B and P and the K and G. I have a lot of articles on my blog about that, and I think it's in both my books. But if you want something from an earlier time period, I'd have to do some research and see if I can find a good book for you. Um, Jana says, "My grandfather's generation didn't want to have old letters to." Yes, I know. It's that's how they are, and that's not a bad thing or a good thing, but it's hard for genealogists because we want all that information. Barbara says, "It seems like if you looked at how names are spelled now, you might be able to guess at a person's origin." Hmm. Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean? There's definitely, like, with last names, like, you can definitely tell where people are from in Germany or Austria, or Switzerland. There's definitely Northern German names and Austrian names and Southern German names. Um, okay, so things like Johannes versus Hans. So that's more of a, shortening thing at some point, like, Hans could be a nickname for Johannes. We were actually talking about this on a webinar last week that in Germany, like, if the name is Christina, that's probably with an A. Either way. Um, Whereas in America, we might shorten that to Chris. In Germany, even today and in the past, they would shorten it to Tina. They take off that first section, excuse me, instead of the last. So that happens a lot and it's not a different name. It's just that short name. So I'm trying to think of another example. Anyone have one off the top of their head? Yes, that's true, and that's because of there was no, spelling, like, there was no standard spelling. A lot of people just spelled it like they sounded, and that Christina with an E sounds exactly the same as Christina with an A, so it really didn't change the pronunciation of the name, it was just spelling. No, I don't think that actually. Oh, yeah, Janice, that's a good one. Gertruda to Truda. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a good example. Thank you. And Barbara, I don't think that's actually a vowel shift. I think that's spelling. So that's just the fact that scribes and people pictured the word in their head and then wrote it down like it sounded. So it really wasn't. You'll see today E's on the end and A's on the end. They sound exactly the same in German, so it really depends, what the personal choice is for how they wanted to spell it and where the priest was educated, that's true. Alright, did I miss any other questions? Yeah, so Barbara, if you wanna check out that spelling, it's one of my favorite topics, it's on my blog, if you just Google, I think it's, "Think Like a German," I think. Spelling variations in German documents. Okay. For anyone else who hasn't read it, something like that, because I think it's fascinating. Even today, like when I was teaching over in Austrian schools, kids would make the same mistakes that we see in genealogy records. So kids would spell Tag, which is day in German, T-A-G, they would spell it T-A-K instead of T-A-G. So even the same mistakes that people made back then, they still make today. I think I read about this in my blog that you read, Barbara. My maiden name is Portnoy, and with a P, and it's that Russian Jewish I was talking about earlier. And, when I went to order a book one time in Salzburg, I said my last name was Portnoy, and he said, "Is that with a hard" what is it? "A hard P or a soft B?" Because they have such a hard time differentiating between those B and the P sounds, and I didn't even know what he meant with a hard P or a soft B, and I was like, "I don't know, it's just a p sound." Um, so that's definitely something that's still prevalent today, and if you're aware of those, things that still go on today, you'll be able to decipher them in the past more easily. Yeah, thanks, Nora. Oh, yeah, Nora's a Schneider. So Schneider Portnoy means tailor in Russian, and Schneider means tailor in German. So that's a funny coincidence. All right. Any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and do our raffle. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Yeah, Barbara. Can you suggest a source that traces historic name trends? Otto became popular with Bismarck, others. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I feel like I could be able to find one pretty easily. Does anyone else know any good naming sites or books? Oh, yeah, no, I do remember we talked about that. I thought that sounded familiar. That's interesting. Absolute explosion of unusual names around 1900. I find names so fascinating, especially today. Now people are just naming things, naming their children whatever they want. But Barbara, I'll try to think about it, and if anyone else thinks about it, send me an email, or if you're a gold member, post it in our premium group, 'cause that would be a good source to know. All right, so everyone is ready for our raffle. I got everyone's names in here. I said you did have to be present to win. Nora, okay, if you happen to go back through your notes or anything and find anything that might be helpful, it'd be great if you didn't mind sharing it. So I think we had 12 people sign up and about 8 people on here, so we'll see. And this is you get to either pick one of my books, or if you already have them or want something else, you can have an additional Vital Record download. And the winner is Janice. So congratulations, Janice. If you can send me an email with what you want, and if it's a book, let me know your address, and if you'd like me to make it out to anybody. And if it's a Vital Record download, I will just give you a code for that. So, this is the first time we did this. Was this okay for you all today? Would you be interested in doing it again in a couple months? Okay, cool, perfect. And I think we decided Chrome is the best. Firefox worked great. Safari, I know we had issues, so that's good to know. Cool. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys all so much for coming. Firefox on Mac, no video. Okay, Barbara, that's good to know. And Deborah's on Safari. Okay. Well, if I go ahead and do webinars with this, I'm going to say Chrome, I think, is the easiest. And the others, it seems to have worked for some people, not for others. So maybe try at your own risk with those others. Okay, good. Yeah, it's nice to, on Wednesdays, I'm just like typing as fast as I can. My brain is always fried after our Wednesday sessions, and it's nice to kind of get to communicate with each other in a more like fluid format rather than just commenting on everyone's posts. So I'm glad that we get to do this. Cool. Thanks, Michelle. Alrighty. So hope you guys all have a great day. I hope you all look lovely in your new haircuts. So maybe next time I will have a new haircut as well. And for the gold members, I'll talk to you all tomorrow. And for the silver and bronze members, thank you guys also so much for coming. And we'll get that premium article out at the end of the month. And I think that's it. Have a good day, everybody.